So in April this year, we sent a call out on Facebook inviting people to send in their family history queries to a panel of experts from the Association of Genealogists and Researchers in Archives, otherwise known as AGRA. So, you know, we've had a fantastic response, which was great. I'm sorry we won't be able to help all of those who sent in their brick walls. But this week, on day one, I'm delighted to have Sharon Grant with me, who is the chair at AGRA and will be helping with 3 of the questions sent in. So thank you for coming on today, Sharon.
Welcome.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about what we're doing this week, what AGRA and we're doing?
Yes, of course. Normally, throughout the year, AGRA would attend a number of family history events across the country. We're very good at being present, and we're there to promote the organisation. But we do hold formal question and answer sessions, and people can approach us informally. So it's a resource there for members of the public to get tips on how to go about genealogy and the difficulties they're experiencing often. So obviously we're unable to do that in lockdown, and we're looking for virtual alternatives. So talking to you, Sarah, is ideal.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. And can you tell us a little bit about AGRA?
So AGRA is a membership organisation. Our members and associates are professional genealogists across England and Wales, and mutual support, and also a website whereby members of the public can search for professional genealogists to help them. And our members will be on the website www.agra.org.uk, and all the members will have different specialities. That might be geography, say you need research in Warwickshire or Wales, or they'll have other specialisms such as military, poor law records. There's a broad range of people there.
Excellent. So people, if your query hasn't been chosen amongst the 100 that got sent in, you need some professional help, have a look on the website and you can hire a genealogist. So first up, we have a question that was submitted by Adrian Latham Barnes. And his query was, I would like help finding a birth record for my paternal grandfather, John Charles Latham. The earliest record I have for him is the 1934 electoral register with his parents in Tadworth. His death certificate gives a birth date of the 12th of January 1912 in France, which explains why he uses Jean and not John in the 1939 register and on his wedding certificate in 1943. So, someone who's looking for a birth record for paternal grandfather, can you help?
Well, we need to look at John Charles, as he was known in England, and Adrian needs to look at newspapers, which are, you know, just such an exciting source for us to be able to use now. So the earliest reference I found to John Charles is in 1929 in the Surrey Mirror, when he was fined 10 shillings for not having a red rear light on his motor vehicle.
Oh.
So we know at that stage he was in Tadworth, and then we know that his father, John Gilbert Latham, was in Tadworth from 1915. So I've concentrated on him and his whereabouts. Now, John Gilbert, the father, was actually born in Liverpool, and his father was a mariner. So my first thought was, he's a mariner. Is that maybe he's followed his father's occupation? Is that how he's ended up in France? But he ends up in Epsom, Tadworth, near Epsom, which is not that far from the coast, but it's not really a seafaring centre. So again, we have to turn to the newspapers, and there's an obituary for John Gilbert, father, that appears in the Surrey Mirror on the 1st of February 1935. And I'm not going to read it in full, but I'll just summarise. It's a notice about his funeral in Tadworth, and it talks about him let me see, I've got it here. Mr. Latham was at one time a jockey, but he was wounded in the war and had since been employed at racing stables in the district. So to me, he's been born and brought up in Liverpool, where you have centres of racing, you know, including Aintree. And he's moved down to Epsom, where we have the very famous Epsom Down racecourse. And I think that's where Adrian needs to look next, because racing was well, it was the sport of kings. It's very international. I always think of Edward VII sort of, you know, being on the continent of these various race courses. And there were you know, very strong connections between racing in England and France. So I think there's a possibility that it was in France in 1912, 1913 as a jockey, or in some other connection. So I would direct Adrian to the Horse Racing Museum, which is based in Newmarket, for advice initially. You know, there's various publications like the Racing Calendar, and I'm sure he might be able to associate John Gilbert, the father, with an owner and a trainer, and possibly locate where he was in France at that time. So it's quite exciting, that, but it will take a lot of hard work. My one other tip would be to check with the Surrey History Centre and see what school records there are for John Charles, and to see if he can establish when he actually came into the country. So there we go, lots of work.
Oh, but it sounds very helpful. And actually, I've certainly found with European research, you often have to know where someone was, because records are held regionally quite often in Europe, aren't they? So, as you say, he needs to find out where the horse racing was going on. So that's excellent. Sounds very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's an analogy with finding someone with a Scottish or an Irish birth. You know, it seems, you know, oh, that's the clue, but, you know, you have to establish where in those countries the person was actually came from. So,
absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Sharon. There's plenty there for Adrian to think about. Next up, we have Sally Heaver, who says, we have a huge brick wall. My partner's grandfather, Arthur Grenville Browne, is not on any birth records or census. We have a marriage, so we have him on the 1939 register and a death certificate, but no birth certificate. None of the relatives would talk about him, and there were rumours of him disappearing to the south coast. He was born, we think, in 1897, so should be on the 1901 and 1911 censuses, but we cannot find him. So, Sharon, there's another grandfather where they can't find a birth record. Have you got any suggestions for Sally?
There's two issues here. One is the name. When you look at the birth, marriage, and death indexes, there's only a few entries using that double-barreled name. So, and they relate to Arthur and his wife and two daughters. Right. Otherwise, it doesn't appear. So, you know, it's either a name that he's adopted, or it was a middle name, and they've later adopted the double-barrel style. So, of course, once you remove the name Grenville from the equation, you have the name Arthur Browne, admittedly with an E, but, you know, that will be dropped from time to time. So I'm afraid that's the big difficulty. There is light at the end of the tunnel, though. The death certificate is pretty crucial here, and because it describes his occupation as a pilot officer in the RAF retired. So we know he was in the armed forces. So all service records post 1921, Army, Navy, RAF, they're still held by the Ministry of Defence. But you know, we can request the records for individuals through the www.gov.uk website. You just need to do a research along the line of requests for personal data and service records, and it should all come up and explain the application process to you. you need to provide the death certificate, and there's a fee of £30, I think, but it's well worth it just because of the amount of information that you can find in those service records. And I think, I'm pretty sure that record, once they receive it, should give more details about the birth and a place of birth, and then that is the thing to investigate going forward. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So,
thank you, Sharon. I'm sure Sally and her partner will be delighted with that help. And as you say, ordering his Second World War service record. And I understand that the MOD are looking at an online. It's a slow process, isn't it, getting hold of Second World War service records? But I understand they are speeding that up with
they're all getting better. There was a particular problem with the army some time ago, but I think the Navy and the RAF have been relatively quick because they're not dealing with the same numbers.
And there's also some, I would just throw in as well, there are some RAF records, varying records on the National Archives website that are free at the moment during lockdown. Yeah. So, I suppose Sally might want to have a quick look and see if there's any information there. So that's all excellent. Thank you very much. Finally, we've got a question from Jean Garrigan, who's looking for help with her maternal ancestors. And this is what she's asked. So she says, my 3 times great-grandfather, Alexander Donothey, married Agnes Doran in Carlisle, Cumbria in 1859. I have found him on the 1861 census saying he was born in 1837 in Carlisle, and his death record suggests he was born in 1839. The Donothys and the Dorans came over from Ireland and settled in Carlisle. I can't find Alexander on the 1841 or 1851 census, although there is an Alexander Donoghey. I have found in 1841 who has siblings that match his. Could this be my family? So Sharon, any tips for Jean trying to track down her 3 times great-grandfather? Why can't she find him?
Well, this is another one where the name causes problems. There's so many variants of it, and it's not only spelled differently from generation to generation, but within the generations. So Alexander and his wife, Agnes, they had at least 9 children, and only 5 are registered in the name with the spelling that Jean has given us. So it's thinking about the variety of spelling as you go through this. Now, they married, Agnes and Alexander married in 1959, and Jean has told us that she hasn't got the marriage certificate yet. Yeah, that's crucial because that will give the father's name, and occupation, and it's very close to the 1961 census. So she definitely needs to get that when things return to normal. And I would do that rather than trying to jump ahead and find people in the 1841 census. And then the earliest child I found born to that marriage was in 1860, and that's Mary Ann. And I would suggest that she gets that birth certificate because, again, it's close to the 1861 census. And from both those documents, you're also going to get an address from each, and they may be different, and that will help in searching the 1861 census. I think also, I think also Jean needs to think about geography here and how close Carlisle is to the Scottish border. It's we have there's a lot of movement between Ireland and England through Liverpool, but there was real migration between Ireland and Glasgow, and a large Irish population in Glasgow. And even though the census may say that he was born in Carlisle, you need to be skeptical. He may have believed that he's born in Carlisle. So therefore it's important to find earlier census returns of him with his family before he married, as it may give a different place of birth. I mean, just for information, I did find I found an Alexander Donothey in the 1851 census in Anderston, Lanarkshire, which is Glasgow, born in 1833, born in Ireland. So I'm not saying that's him at all, but Jane just needs to keep an open mind and be a little sceptical about some of the information she's taking from census returns. I hope that helps.
Yes, so that's another avenue. I'm sure she will be delighted that. That's very interesting. So thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll be running these throughout the week with other experts from AGRA. Thank you all for joining us, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.